All right, so in this video, we're gonna be talking about the film camera that has opened up the most doors in my photography career, the Contax G2. Also, we're trying a new angle. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So this is a PVR, a Pure Vibes review of the Contax G2 system. The definition of a Pure Vibes review is listed as the following: a review that focuses on the user interface and outcomes of a product. In today's case, what sort of images come out of the Contax G2 system? If you're looking for a review that focuses on the minute technical aspects of this camera system, there are plenty of other videos on the tube that go more into detail. This video was specifically focused on my user experience, having been an owner of this system for 3 years in both a professional and a personal setting. Let's begin. So these reviews I find on YouTube are typically super drawn out, so let's cut right to the chase. Here's some sample images produced by the Contax G2 with primarily the 28mm f2.8 lens and a few images on the 45mm. As someone who's fascinated by film photography and just generally loves the look of images produced on traditional film stocks, I'd always been looking for the perfect film camera that would help me achieve this desired outcome. The perfect camera in my eyes fit 3 categorical boxes. The first, size. Mainly, is it lightweight and portable? So let me talk about this camera in terms of its use in a professional setting, primarily as a tool, and also obviously in personal settings as well. For me in particular, I typically use film in fashion and event recap settings. And so these settings are typically done with myself in smaller crews or very tight and restrictive scenarios where you don't have open spaces. And we live in a world where we have fantastic DSLRs, fantastic digital options for photography, but we still obviously love that analog feel. When I'm shooting for clients, the unpredictability of analog just in general, I know that the more that you know a system, the easier it is to predict the outcome. But just in terms of actual gear failure and the overall nature of film itself, I know that most professional photographers and most photographers typically shoot digital as well as film, even if they're known for mostly film. Thus, film setups are typically a backup plan in professional settings. Even if the primary output and primary focus of the shoot may be film, more often than not in a professional setting, the client will definitely want to see digital stills. They'll probably want to have tethered as you're shooting. They'll want to see what you're shooting as you're shooting. And thus, more often than not, film is an afterthought or a B cam for specific looks. That's why the size is so important to me specifically, because having this camera around in your bag or just strapped around you all day, the size of the Contax G2 is much more appreciated than the size of, let's say, the Nikon F100 or the Nikon F5 or more typical SLRs that are basically giving you the same functions as the Contax G2, but a much larger form factor. I can strap this thing around me or have it in my bag, and it's such a small form that I really don't have it bothering me too much on a long shoot. And it's something that you can easily pick up or swing around and capture a few frames. And just the form factor itself is just really ergonomic and easy to use. It's something that I really appreciate. 2, consistency. Let's talk about the feature that probably is the reason why I gravitate to this system so much, and its overall consistent output of images in various lighting conditions. Now, this camera in particular, I know most people treat it as basically a souped up point and shoot camera. The only difference being that these camera systems allow for interchangeable lenses. Specifically, I guess this is classified as a rangefinder, but with the autofocus, it's basically a point and shoot with the ability to change your aperture quite easily. The lens that I use most often on this camera is the 28mm because I like the wide focal length, but I also have the 45mm, and both produce really nice and pleasing results. The autofocus rarely, if ever, misses, and I shoot this pretty much on aperture priority mode. I just have it set to automatically calibrate the shutter speed according to whatever aperture I select. So this camera in particular goes all the way up to 1/4000th of a second, and you can manually focus as well if you'd like. But typically I just have this camera in autofocus mode, aperture priority, set your focus, and let the camera do the rest. The only main accessory that I have for this camera camera is the Contax TLA200. This flash is definitely kind of expensive, but it pairs so nicely in the metering mode with the TTL to the Contax G2. Basically, you put it on TTL, and it automatically meters your situation. And it gives great fill flash in outdoor situations, but also primarily at night. It looks great. It just fills in the subject quite nice, and it gives you that point and shoot feel that you're looking for in this system. And finally, the third category, image quality, which is kind of all encompassing. The lenses that come with this system are primarily the reason why people get into this system. I run and gun with mostly, as I said before, the 28mm lens, and the images are tack sharp. They say that they're really similar to the Leica system, which I've never owned a Leica yet, but from the images that I've seen on social media and on the interwebs, the quality definitely stands up to the images that are produced from the G2 system. There's an undeniable sharpness in the images that you get back from this system. Here are some examples of some images shot in the G2 system versus, let's say in this scenario, the Olympus Mute 2. Here are also some images of the G2 compared to the Nikon F5, which is more along the lines of a similar system in terms of it's an SLR. It'll give you sharper lenses to choose from than a point and shoot. But again, if you factor in the size and form factor of the actual camera, I much prefer the G2. I've gone through, honestly, at least 100, 150 rolls through this, and I haven't been disappointed. I've had friends who have talked about the fragility of the camera, and knock on wood, I've dropped this a couple times. It's been through the mud, the rain, through everything with me, and it's performed extremely well. My personal experience has been, this has been an extremely reliable camera, and it's a body and lens system that I gravitate towards just because the images that I produce from this setup are always really some of my favorite film images that I've ever created. The images that I've captured with this system have allowed me to really develop my portfolio, reach other clients, reach new clients, reach campaigns that I never thought would have been possible without sharper images. Do those have anything to do with this particular film system? It does, because the form factor and the ability and the ease of use of this camera in particular has allowed me to really get into positions or get into locations and scenarios that otherwise wouldn't have been as easily accessible with another system. And a lot of time I'm doing a lot of hybrid shooting. So that's shooting video, photo, and when you have various other large gear setups for particularly video and also a little bit of photo, you don't want another bulky SLR alongside you the whole day, something that doesn't really promote you quickly picking it up and using it. So that's why I think the form factor of this has really encouraged the use of shooting on film and has encouraged the use of producing images that have been some of my favorites. Would I recommend this system now in 2024? I know the prices have gone up drastically since I purchased in early 2021. I think the quality of image you get from the system is definitely worth it. I think if you're a bit slower shooter and you don't need to be as quick of a run and gun situation type shooter, the Contax G1 is about half the price for the body, and you can pick those up on eBay quite readily. The only caveat is that they are a bit slower in autofocus, and I have tried this out. I have confirmed that they are a little bit slower and sometimes do miss focus. That might have just been my own personal experience with the system. So I do think that there are obvious benefits to getting the G2 over the G1, but as with anything, there are pros and cons. It's a lot more expensive. And if you're fine with the G1 system, I think you can produce just as good results. Maybe not as quickly, but not considerably slower either. Again, knock on wood that this thing doesn't all of a sudden die on me tomorrow after I film this video, but I've only had great experiences with this camera. And I just wanted to share both the images that I've produced with this camera and also just my overall experience using this from 3 years of both personal and professional use. As an analog shooter, you're always on the hunt for better alternatives. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments below. If you've owned the G2 and you have any qualms about the system, please leave them in the comments below and share any information you have with people who might be interested in purchasing this system. Thanks again, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.